Hi, everyone. My name is Barbara Cox, and I'm starting a podcast called 40 Minutes of Faith. I wanted to introduce it to you briefly and in the future offer some recordings with different guests. The podcast website is 40minutesoffaith.com, and it has already been published on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and a couple of other podcast providers. I use a bunch of different Bible translations during the podcast. I'm going to show you a couple of different Bibles. And I want to let you know the reason why the tagline is not just another Bible study is that a lot of Bible studies use really important academic techniques and maybe going through every passage kind of verse by verse. But we're typically not going to do that with the guest speaker. We're going to talk about the passage and how it feels in real life and applicability. And so saying that, still, honoring the important scholarly work that other Bible studies do, but not this one. And we're not going in any particular order. We're not going through the whole Bible from the beginning to the end. And at this point, we're not spending a bunch of episodes in one book of the Bible. We're kind of hopping around and see where that gets us. So the main translation that I use is called the NRSV. It stands for New Revised Standard Version. I happen to have a Lutheran study Bible because I'm Lutheran. And I just wanted to show you study Bibles have questions in the margins and additional information. So if you want to know more about a certain word, it's not for every single word. There's other books for that. But it talks about, say, for example, in Matthew 5, verses 43 to 48, it talks about loving your enemies. So we are commanded to love our neighbors, but that doesn't mean you love your neighbors and then you hate your enemies. So that's just one example of information that you might find in a study Bible. And then another version that I really, really like is called The Message, which is a more contemporary translation. And the one that I have also has some coloring in the side, which I like. Just some people are really good at doodling and things like that. And I would rather just color in something. So this verse is from Zechariah chapter 7. It says, "Be compassionate with each other." So I wanted to let you know that I use a website called BibleGateway.com. And if you type in either a word or a certain Bible verse, there's a drop-down menu with a ton of different Bible translations in actually a large number of languages. So there's a bunch of English translations, and then there's also others. If your first language is another language, or if you're studying another language, it's really neat. I don't get any endorsements from any of these, just passing along some resources to you. And then we also have in an upcoming episode, a professor from a seminary talking about the nature of different translations and interpretations and things like that. So I wanted to let you know that the episodes that have already been published range in a variety of topics. We have a friend of mine named Melissa talks about fear and different ways that we can handle fear, and maybe sometimes does anything good ever happen at the end of a fearful episode? And so that's not to mock anyone who's in a fearful situation right now. And I always want to provide resources as well. So the 40minutesoffaith.com website provides some resources, and then just know that there's a lot of other resources out there. So if you're in an unsafe situation, call the police or 911. And I know for not everybody, calling the police is always going to end up in a particularly helpful situation with what's happening in current events. But, hypothetically, there's also social service agencies that hopefully are able to help. And I also reference a number of documents that are called social statements that were produced by the Evangelical Lutheran Church in America. That's the church I belong to, and their website is elca.org. So I have a guest speaker named Deb talking with me about faith and social justice. So and you don't have to belong to a church or anything like that to try and promote justice in the world. You can just, kind of help in a lot of different ways. So we talk about that. So the document's just a starting spot on different strategies, different reasons why we are caring for our neighbor. And who is our neighbor? What does that even mean? We have a friend of mine named Sabrina, and we talk about waiting in another episode. Sometimes we just feel like we're waiting forever for life to change or for a prayer to be answered or something like that. So we look at different Bible verses in each of these episodes, but we're not doing like a detailed historical analysis or anything like that. That certainly has its place, and there's other resources where you can get that type of information. My friend Hillary and I talk about our relationship with God. I know that some people have been rejected from different faith-based institutions, and my heart really goes out to them if that ever happened to you, because there are churches who welcome a really wide diversity of folks. And I know some places give lip service to welcome, and then it might not really be a lot of actual welcome, but some places are really trying hard to be welcoming. So my friend Sarah and I actually talked in a recent episode about what does inclusive and expansive language mean? So for example, do we always have to call God he? Is it possible that God could be a she, or God could be so big that God is beyond gender as we have it assigned here on earth? And we also talk about, a lot of people think, oh, people on earth are only he or she, but some people on earth don't feel like he or she, or they might be changing from one to the other, or prefer the pronoun they. So we talk about that and some resources in that episode. And then I'm just about to publish one coming up about gloom, different gloomy seasons of our life that might include anxiety. And in this episode, my friend Carol has a son who was recently diagnosed with autism. So talking about that process and different supports around that. So I want to welcome you. Looking forward to any feedback that you have, either reviews on Apple Podcasts or on the comments on the blog on 40minutesoffaith.com. Looking forward to connecting if you have any particular requests of topics that you would like to hear more about. And then I'll be inviting different guests to do shorter videos. So each podcast episode is about 40 minutes, but the YouTube videos will be a little shorter than that, just checking in on different current day topics. Thanks, and I hope you have a great day.